Why do I keep buying these handhelds? Is it because I'm empty inside, lacking the drive to better myself or my life, and just look to meaningless external material objects that don't provide any real fulfillment but just give me a shallow, fatuous gratification? Well, yeah, probably. And I'm totally fine with it. Roll the intro. Hey there, how you doing? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. Some people say that all these handhelds feel like the same thing, but I don't know where they get that idea. I mean, just look at these handhelds. How could anyone confuse an RGB20S for an RG353V or an RG35XX Plus is beyond me. They couldn't be more different. I don't get it. Including this. We got another handheld. This has been sitting on my desk for like over a month. I had such a backlog of stuff to get through, so this one got kinda neglected. And you know what? That was a big mistake because it's a really interesting thing. It's unique, it performs well, and it's freaking cheap. So not only are you getting one last TechDweeb handheld review, you're getting a review of yet another amazing bang for the buck handheld. Yet another sleeper hit in the merciless handheld jungle. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the PowKiddy XU10. Or I guess it's the AMPOWN XU10. It was supposed to be PowKiddy. Huh. Is AMPOWN PowKiddy? That's confusing. This thing is solid for the price. We get the power to play up to and including PS1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, Nintendo DS, and PSP. It is a sleek, elegant handheld with some unique aesthetic touches, great ergonomics, dual analog sticks, great controls, great screen, comes packed with games, and a really crappy operating system. Oh, a crappy operating system? Well then why am I saying so many good things about it? Well, I'll get to that, but not yet. You'll need to wait for the surprise twist, because there's a thing that you can do to this that will fix basically everything that's wrong with it within about 5 minutes, transforming it from something kinda meh into something kinda what? This XU10 was sent to me by gogamegeek. They sell this. I'll include a link to this in the description below if you'd like to pick one up. Let's go over the specs first. We get an RK3326S CPU in the XU10. It's a very solid chip that we don't usually get at this price point. We also get 1GB of DDR4 RAM, no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or video out, unfortunately. It has a 3000 mAh battery, which should last between 6 to 8 hours, single front-facing mono speaker, and my model has a 128GB micro SD card preloaded with games. And it has a 3.5-inch 640 by 480 IPS OCA laminated display. For the unboxing, there's nothing really interesting about the unboxing experience except that it's marked as AMPOWN, but I was expecting a device from PowKiddy, so yeah, not sure what's going on with that. In the box, we get some stuff. The device, USB A to C cable, a word paper with some teeny tiny writing, and a screen protector. No special treats or candy or anything like that, unfortunately. You'll have to add your own. On the front, we have a D-pad, ABXY buttons, start and select button, and dual thumbsticks with L3 and R3 click, along with a single mono speaker. Around back, we have our bumper and trigger buttons and also a power button and reset switch. A curious place for that. On the right side, this is a headphone hole and a function button, which is like a menu button, and an LED power indicator. And your primary SD card hole, which holds my 128GB SD card. On the left side, we get a volume rocker and your second SD card hole for your games card, I guess. On the top, we get a USB-C hole for charging and another USB-C hole for OTG connection, although I couldn't get anything to work in that. Nothing on the bottom. Shape and function-wise, it's basically the same as the other things that this is imitating, like the RG353V or the PowKiddy RGB20S. However, they've done a little bit of a unique visual flair added by these sort of protruded accents on top and the way the booty bumps at the bottom stick down. It adds a nice little difference to the shape that helps it stand out. I like the way it looks. It's comfortable enough. I like the hand feel, nice slight texture on the plastic. My model is the white model, but it also comes in smoky gray and grape flavors. The buttons are good. They're a good size, not too small, not too big, good amount of travel, soft click to them. The bumpers and triggers feel the same, and they have a very slight rattle in the shake test. The thumbsticks are okay. They have some slight cardinal direction snapping, but they're about standard quality for a device like this. And considering that we can play PSP, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PS1 on here, having analog sticks is a big bonus for gaming on those systems. Let's move on to the D-pad because this is cool. The D-pad looks a little weird. However, looks can be deceiving, and this D-pad is amazing. Not only are the inputs perfect, with no false diagonals and smooth transition to the diagonals as you rotate your thumb around the pad, but the actual feel is great. The indentation in the middle because of the chamfered corners on the inside of the D-pad segments makes it super easy to pivot and rotate the D-pad around. For like fighting games, it's perfect. Even a noob like me can pull off dragon punches and fireballs. This D-pad just raises the enjoyment factor. And not to get too technical on you, but it would be about here, but now it's like here. That's like this much difference. That's what this D-pad does for this thing. The system on the XU10 is a big topic. First, the bad news, which might not be bad news depending on what kind of gamer you are. The default system that comes on here is a heavily modified version of Amberelec, but it's so modified that you barely recognize it. On boot, we get this dumb intro movie that you can't disable. The front-end skin looks like a Pandora's box skin, and all the front-end system options have been stripped away. You can browse through your systems, see your games, see all the game art pre-scraped. It's actually not terrible. The only options you get are some super simple things like changing the language and the brightness, no front-end skin settings, just the basics. You can launch the games and they are all pre-configured and they work. The in-game options are super basic. You just get save state stuff and cheats. That's it. It all works and you get the basics taken care of and there's nothing to screw up. So if you're just a basic user or buying this for a kid or whatever, then it's probably going to be a pretty enjoyable system because yeah, you get the convenience of knowing that it's all gonna work and keep working because there's nothing that you can break. However, if you're a tech dweeb like me, you're not going to settle for a basic system, are you? Maybe you want to have control over your stuff. Well, here's the good news. Remember how I said this OS is built on Amberelec? Well, you can actually restore the functionality of Amberelec, more or less completely. And you'll be able to use this thing as if it's a completely proper, customizable retro handheld that isn't locked down because you're not a baby. So, how do you fix it? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. First, you need to download some system files from Amberelec. You can download the image, but I suggest you grab this RG351V 7-zip file from this website made by Dev Floki on the Retro Handhelds Discord. So, unzip that 351V file, and you'll see 2 system files in there. Then all you need to do is put your XU10 SD card in your computer, open up the MAGICX system partition, back up the 2 system files from there onto your computer in case you ever want to restore it, and then you can delete those off the SD card and replace them with the 2 system files from the zip. And that's it. You're done. Now when you boot the device, you won't get that annoying boot animation. Instead, you'll go right into the front end. But now when you open the options, you'll get the full suite of Amberelec options, including the option to change the front end skin, and all the other Amberelec options, obviously. However, there are a few caveats. First, your box art won't work. So you might want to re-scrape your box art if you're into that sort of thing. Also, you will likely need to set up the controls again in RetroArch. I also set up the hotkeys the way that I wanted them, but this is all optional tinkering. And then that's what we're here for, right? To get a full-featured retro handheld experience on a device that is way cheaper than it should be considering what we get here. Oh, one last word of warning. Do not change the overclocking settings in the Amberelec settings. You will get stuck in a boot loop and have to reflash your SD card from scratch. Pain in the buns, you have been warned. The performance is going to be the same whether or not you did the Amberelec unlock or not. And the performance is really good considering the price of this thing. It's an RK3326 chip, which has been benchmarked to death for years now. You're going to be able to play everything up to PS1 with no problem. All the old retro games and systems like NES, Arcade, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx-16, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, all that stuff is going to run great and look great on this screen. Oh, but I just realized I didn't even talk about the screen yet. It's a good screen. There, I talked about it. Every PS1 game is going to run fine. You won't have any issues with performance on any of these. Nintendo 64 is going to mostly be okay. You won't have perfect performance with the hardest to run stuff, but the majority of Nintendo 64 games are going to run fine. Nintendo DS is good, and it works good. Even the thumbstick is properly bound to touchscreen functions, which is nice. And you can go full screen and swap the screens or show them stacked, whatever you want. Sega Saturn is actually pretty good. We get to use the standalone Yaba Sanshiro emulator, which means that we get decent performance in all but the hardest games to emulate. Dreamcast is a tricky situation because if we mod the device to use Amberelec, we lose the standalone Dreamcast emulator because the controls aren't bound. You can set the games to launch in RetroArch, and they work there with the right controls, but the performance won't be as good as the standalone emulator. So if Dreamcast is really important for you, then you might want to consider not modding the system, or at least hang on to those system files so that you can switch it back and forth. Because Dreamcast works way better on the default system because you can use the standalone emulator. And finally, we have PSP, and this was a nice surprise because it ran better than I expected. My go-to testing game is GTA Vice City Stories because it's like a medium complexity game to run, and it actually ran great. So I'd say most PSP will run fine. I'm kind of conflicted about whether or not to recommend the XU10. It's a really well-built device with solid controls, good form factor, nice screen, and really good performance for the price. And the default lockdown system might be a turn-off for some people and a turn-on for others. I think lots of people just want something that works, something that comes with the games and the emulators all set up without 1,000 options and nothing to break. Those people will enjoy the XU10 a lot. And some TechDweebs like me and maybe you, we like to tinker. So the XU10 is like a fun project because you can mod it and add functionality and open it up so you can customize it and make it your own to see what it can really do. But for someone who wants something that works, something that is customizable, but something that has a nice, stable, tried and tested, community-supported operating system, someone who wants all the options without any of the jank, then the XU10 probably isn't a good choice. I'd say for that kind of person, you should spend a bit more and just get an RGB20S or an RG353V or something like that. I'm glad I have an XU10 to tinker with and play with. It's a great little device and it has a lot of potential, and we may get a proper release of Amberelec or Gelos or something for this thing in the future, and that'll give us the best of both worlds, I think. Until then, it's a great device at a great price, but it might not be for everyone. Not yet, at least. And of course, don't forget, if you want to buy one, this is available from gogamegeek, and there's a link in the description below. And that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then check out this video, my review of the TrimUI Smart Pro, and it's another very unique and cheap device. There's a link on the screen right now and down in the description below, and you can go watch that now because we're done. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.